Well, let's be clear here. I'm actually a DJ.
No way.
But the key point here, as it relates to signaling, is that getting the CFP designation is a costly signal. It's credibly demonstrating some combination of intelligence and work ethic that you need to get through the CFP designation process. Hey everyone. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different reaction, and reacting to what might be the most famous financial planning commercial. Now, that might be about as low of a bar as you can set for fame, but well, this is a financial planning channel, so what do you want me to do? That said, this commercial does have some interesting context, background, and impact on financial planning as a profession, so I think it will be fun to dive into. Now, before we get to the commercial itself, let's take a quick look at the setup and context for this commercial. The CFP Board, which manages the CFP or Certified Financial Planner designation, was looking to increase awareness for the CFP designation. To do so, in 2011, they launched what ended up being an over $40 million advertising campaign as of 2015, which was actually so expensive, they needed to nearly double membership dues for CFP certificates. As you might expect, this already had a number of financial planners upset and questioning whether this was going to be a worthwhile use of membership fees. Then, in 2014, when the CFP Board released this famous commercial, which includes a DJ duping people into thinking he's a real financial advisor, some people got really mad, feeling like they were paying a lot of money for an ad campaign that they felt actually discredited the profession. Now, I personally disagree with the critics of this campaign. I think it was actually a great campaign, which we'll get into some of the reasons for here later, but I just want to set that stage. With that in mind, let's jump right into the commercial.
Let me talk to you about retirement. A 401k is the most sound way to go. But let's talk asset allocation.
Sure.
You seem knowledgeable, professional.
Would you trust me as your financial advisor?
I would.
I would indeed.
I think most of us would agree that the advisor is coming off very professional here. He looks the part, he's talking very clearly, he is using some industry buzzwords, so far, it all looks pretty normal here.
Well, let's be clear here. I'm actually a DJ.
No way.
I have no financial experience at all.
That really is you.
If they're not a CFP pro, you just don't know. Find a certified financial planner professional who's thoroughly vetted at letsmakeaplan.org. CFP, work with the highest standard.
All right, so pretty clever ad, in my opinion. Obviously, the message here is that if someone isn't a CFP, you shouldn't necessarily trust that they have any expertise. Just through a makeover and the use of some lingo, these people were duped into thinking this DJ was a credible financial advisor. Now, we're going to dive into all sorts of little details with this commercial. But before we get started, a very important concept related to this ad is what economists would refer to as signaling. Signaling is just a fancy way of saying that sometimes we engage in costly behaviors to credibly convey something about ourselves to a third party. Now, for a signal to be credible, it's very important that it's costly. Talk is cheap, right? If we imagine someone is in an interview setting, of course they're going to put their best foot forward, and they generally are going to tell you, hey, I'm actually pretty lazy, I show up to work late a lot, and I have a history of making office supplies disappear. The reality is, we can't really trust someone's personal statement in a context like an interview, because they're going to say what they think you want to hear. But if they could engage in some behavior that would credibly demonstrate their desirable traits to a prospective employer, that's an effective form of signaling. We actually see this in animal mating behavior all the time. It's in many respects wasteful for a peacock to grow a giant, elaborate tail, but this is a costly and credible signal of the peacock's genetic fitness. Perhaps the quintessential example of signaling is investing in a college education. It takes time and effort to get a college education. What's sort of interesting about an education as a signal is that there are really two primary traits that it might be signaling: work ethic and intelligence. Now, you can have different combinations of these traits and be successful in college. There are students that work really hard but aren't that bright. There may be other students who are highly intelligent but don't have a very good work ethic. Both of these can be successful. Of course, most companies would love to hire employees who are intelligent and hardworking, but the main point here is that all a college degree tells us is that someone had some combination of intelligence and work ethic that allowed them to complete, say, a particular degree and earn a particular GPA. Now, another related concept here is what's known as the sheepskin effect. The sheepskin effect refers to the fact that actually that final semester of college, when you actually complete your degree, has an outsized impact on the total return on investment of a college education. Now, We wouldn't expect this if college was merely adding to somebody's education and building their human capital. But instead, what we see is that we don't actually see that much growth in your earnings potential as you complete the first years of college. But then you complete that very last semester, you actually get your degree, and then your value of that degree jumps significantly. And this is referred to as the sheepskin effect, going back to when diplomas were actually printed on sheepskin. However, if we go back to the employment interview example, a college degree is valuable in the job market because it is a costly activity that credibly signals to a prospective employer that someone has some combination of work ethic and intelligence needed to complete that particular degree. So what does this have to do with the CFP? Well, the CFP designation is itself a signal. It's costly because you have to complete what are often referred to as the 4 E's of the CFP designation: education, examination, experience, and ethics. So the first step in the process is completing the education requirements. There are actually 2 educational requirements. First, you need to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited university. This is actually a recent requirement and one that I disagree with for some reasons we'll get to later. And second, you need to complete the CFP coursework through a CFP Board registered program. Usually this consists of 6 to 8 courses that cover topics like investments, estate planning, risk management, insurance, taxation, retirement planning, and other miscellaneous financial planning topics. Once you've completed the coursework, then you have to pass an exam. Now this exam is pretty tough. People have differing opinions, but what I've generally heard is when you compare it to some of the other designations that are commonly sought by financial planners, it's not quite as hard as the CFA exams, and it's not quite as hard as passing all of the CPA exams in one go. However, to become a CPA, you actually don't have to pass all the exams at the same time. And in fact, many people will break them up and focus on different content areas at different times. And if you compare the CFP exam to passing the CPA exam through a more modular route, then the CFP exam may actually be harder. The exam itself is taken in one day during 2 3-hour sessions, and it consists of 170 questions. Back in the olden days, when I passed the exam, it used to be a paper exam, and you might have to drive a long ways to take it. But now you can do it on a computer at a testing center. Once you pass this exam, you then have to fulfill an experience requirement, either 2 years of experience if you're working in an apprenticeship model under a CFP, or 3 years if you're working in a more tangential role that is still related to the financial planning process. And finally, you have to fulfill the ethics requirements of the CFP Board, which includes things like agreeing to act as a fiduciary when engaging with clients, which means you have to put your client's best interest ahead of your own. But the key point here, as it relates to signaling, is that getting the CFP designation is a costly signal. It's credibly demonstrating some combination of intelligence and work ethic that you need to get through the CFP designation process. Additionally, the experience requirement is signaling some commitment to the industry and likely some general topical interest, as it's hard to imagine why someone would want to take the CFP coursework, pass the exam, and spend years working in the industry if they didn't have some passion for it. So the CFP absolutely works as an effective signal. It's certainly not a perfect signal. I know CFPs I wouldn't trust to manage my money, but I would absolutely take a random CFP over a random non-CFP if I was forced to make that decision. And that's really the heart of the issue here, and the point the commercial was making.
If they're not a CFP pro, you just don't know. Find a certified financial planner professional who's thoroughly vetted at letsmakeaplan.org.
Most people can put on a suit, learn a few buzzwords, but by seeking out a CFP, you've at least sought out someone who has some baseline level of competence. Now, I do want to dive back into the commercial and note some particular details here. First, the DJ in this case pulls this off in part because of how polished and effective of a communicator he is.
Let me talk to you about retirement. A 401k is the most sound way to go. But let's talk asset allocation.
There are probably lots of DJs that you could put in a suit and still wouldn't come off this articulate, which when I first saw this ad actually made me think, this is probably an actor, right? This can't be a real DJ. But I was wrong. I did a little digging, and it turns out his name is Asmith Kaminsky. Now, Asmith is an actor, so I was at least right about that, but he's also a legit DJ, or at least he was DJing around the time of the CFP commercial. In fact, his IMDb bio says he actually moved out to California, started DJing in LA, and that led to a fateful encounter when someone working on Pirates of the Caribbean 3 saw him, told him he had a good pirate look, and then invited him out to a casting. And then not only did they like his look enough to make him one of the 500 pirates featured in the movie, but he received the honors of being one of the 21 pirates hung in the opening scene of Pirates of the Caribbean 3. Asmith then went on to have some significant roles in movies like Forbidden Fruit, in which he investigates his enhanced performance after eating some apples that were accidentally infused with male sexual enhancement pills.
Gotta try this.
Oh crap! Whoa! Whoa! Holy crap!
It's getting bigger.
Gross, dude.
In many subsequent roles, Azimuth actually played a DJ, including a DJ on shows like the 90210 Reboot and Criminal Minds, where, in both cases, his dreadlocks that we see get cut off here in the CFP commercial were prominently featured. Unfortunately, it looks like his acting career has stalled a bit. His IMDb profile doesn't include any new roles since 2017. He does still post an occasional video on YouTube and maintains a Twitter account if you'd like to see what he's been up to since. But we can confirm that he has not regrown his famous dreadlocks, at least as of a video posted earlier this month. Now that leaves me really wanting to know the story behind the casting here. Here's a man ditching his dreadlocks that had been featured so prominently in his career. Was this for a particular role? Certainly he didn't do this just for this commercial, right? But who made that connection? Hey, I know this guy who wants to cut his dreads. Oh, let's get him in this CFP commercial. However these stars align, I'm thankful because this is one of my favorite ads, and Azimuth, thank you for being willing to be a part of it because I do think it's a wonderful commercial. And while we can't say whether it was the DJ commercial per se that was causing the trend shown here, which we do see started before the ad, this commercial was one of the biggest initiatives that was part of a campaign to increase public awareness of the CFP designation at a time when awareness of the CFP designation did go up. Recall that this initiative started in 2011, but the DJ commercial didn't occur until 2014. Now, to take a closer look at our former DJ's attire here, I'd say his look is very realistic. It's a nice but conservative suit. The tie looks like something your grandpa might wear. Now, your attire as a financial advisor should always really match the environment you're working in. A suit might be overkill if you're primarily working with folks from the shipyard, and there certainly are markets where more trendy fashion might be common. But overall, this is a very conservative, traditional financial advisor look. I think the office is also well done. The nice wood and glass with a very clean look. The sign up front that's just two people's names is also very standard. Now, I was curious about this Miller & Kohler brand. Was this made up for the purposes of this video? Was it perhaps a real company and they used their office to shoot the video? So I did some digging and I got an interesting hit on Miller & Kohler. I didn't find any firms in Dallas under that name, but the top result on Google took me to a Facebook page that's actually for a fictitious investment advisory firm that appears to be a social media marketing company. According to their Facebook page, Johnny Depp is a fan, but I'm guessing maybe this was a firm that was hired to provide some sort of consulting or other services related to this ad campaign. Now back to the office, the conference room table, television, artwork, all looks pretty standard. I would say it's a little odd they're meeting with the door open, but I don't know, maybe that made sense for some reason. It does look like there's some sort of award in the background, which would again be fairly common. However, as a general note, if you're a prospective client of a financial advisor, don't be too impressed by financial advisor awards. Some are valuable and truly earned, but most are not, and it's often more of a marketing ploy than anything I would personally use to evaluate an advisor. Now, one little detail I noticed when I was reviewing the transformation video is that I didn't quite understand what they were doing with his ears the first time I saw it. I actually think I thought maybe they were shaving his ears or something, and I know that sounds dumb, but I'm just being honest here. Watching this a second time, I now realize they were filling in his piercing holes on his ears. I don't personally have any piercings, and maybe I'm just really sheltered. Go ahead and make fun of me in the comments. But I honestly didn't realize this was a thing. But in looking at this frame right here, I would actually say that if I were a guy who has piercings like this and was pursuing a career as a financial advisor, I would give serious thought to actually doing this. I don't personally have anything against piercings, and in a perfect world, no one should care if someone has piercings, but this is one of those cases where no matter how unfair the bias might be, I do think there might be some real benefit to doing this. When you look at the before and after, I do think there's some difference here. The only skin visible in a men's suit is your hands, your neck, and your face. Covering those holes up might be worthwhile just to try and avoid any bias. And I mention this particularly because when I'm talking to young advisors, I often run into people who have these sort of idealistic ways of looking at things. They might say, people really shouldn't care about that. And as true as that is, sometimes they do. And you really have to be thoughtful in trying to balance that. For the sake of being thorough, I did see what details I could find on other individuals and organizations involved in making the commercial. One of the more interesting, but completely unrelated, details I found out was that the production company, 3rd Street Mining Company, once had to charge an overage to Snoop Dogg for cleaning out a motorhome after Snoop Dogg smoked in it. That's probably about the least surprising circumstance for an overage I've ever heard of. The director, Neil Tardio Jr., is also apparently the son of a big name in advertising, and his father was responsible for the 1977 Xerox Super Bowl commercial, Brother Dominic. I'll be honest, I had never heard of that commercial, and it really doesn't mean anything to me, but I did find it on a number of all-time best Super Bowl commercial lists, so it must be pretty popular. Unfortunately for Tardio Sr., I think he's been outdone here by his son. Mr. Tardio Jr., if you, for some inexplicable reason, are watching this, please let your father know that I have given you, and not him, the Retirement Prof Super Awesome Best Commercial of All Time Award, which is totally legitimate, or at least as legitimate as many of the awards financial advisors receive. Congratulations, sir. You earned it. Speaking of other awards, this ad campaign was apparently a 2015 Effie Award finalist in the finance category, which, unlike the award I just gave out, is apparently a big deal. What I found even more interesting, though, in coming across the Effie website, is that they include some images and other transformations that I hadn't seen before. It's very possible these ran in print, but again, I just never saw them, so they're at least new to me. The first is sort of a lumberjack-looking guy that they polished up into a financial advisor. It looks like they may have also had a print ad with a joke about funneling the reader's nest egg into his cousin's pyramid scheme. Honestly, I don't really get the connection here. Are lumberjacks big on pyramid schemes? I'm having a hard time imagining a bunch of big burly lumberjacks getting together to hawk cosmetics or dietary supplements, but what do I know? They also had a transformation of a woman, except I'm really not sure what the transformation here was even supposed to be. It looks like this was a woman who just got up in the morning, put her suit on, and then did her hair. Is this pure tattoo bias? Are we supposed to make something of her flexing and roaring like a lion? I don't know what's going on in this one. It's like they're saying she may look professional when she gets dressed in the morning, but guess what? She's fit and she's got tattoos. Hire a CFP. What? This just doesn't make any sense to me. And finally, the FE website also had a graphic showing the CFP Board's website and putting Club Hopping DJ right next to Qualified Financial Advisor. Again, I have no idea if this was actually used or it's just a conceptual type graphic. If you hadn't seen the commercial, though, this one wouldn't really make a lot of sense without that context. I also looked up the agency responsible for the ad, Arnold Worldwide, which left me only thinking of my favorite company with Worldwide in the name.
Prestige. Worldwide. Why?
But apparently Arnold
Worldwide. Why?
is responsible for many of Progressive's ads, including the Flow commercials, and one of my favorite ad series that's out right now, Dr. Rick, whose advice on topics like leaving voicemails is spot on.
Can anyone tell me what Julie did wrong there? No, she just shouldn't have left a voicemail. 9 out of 10 times a text will do.
So clearly some smart people involved in all of this. And ultimately, I do really like the DJ commercial, and I think it truly is one of the best financial planning commercials I've seen. While some advisors really dislike this commercial, I think it's actually a really smart commercial because it's tackling a real issue that consumers face in the marketplace when shopping for a financial advisor. Trying to tell the difference between advisors can be really difficult. They tend to look and sound the same. As a consumer, looking for credible signals, such as the CFP designation, is one of the most valuable things you can do to at least get some better understanding of a professional. Now, in my opinion, the CFP designation has sort of become just table stakes when it comes to a quality financial advisor putting themselves out there in the world. If you're a new advisor getting into the field, you should absolutely be getting the CFP. Beyond that, there are actually more advanced designations that advisors might want to consider as sort of a post-CFP designation to help indicate their specialty and focus. But as I mentioned before, there is one major issue that I have with the fairly recent changes to the CFP education requirements, which was the addition of a bachelor's degree to meet that education requirement. Now, why don't I like this addition? Well, this is a case where the signal is really actually arbitrary and not doing much more that was useful above and beyond the requirements already in place. Recall that the CFP designation already requires candidates to complete college-level coursework in financial planning areas and pass a difficult exam. By having those in place, we already have a filter that will assess some combination of work ethic, intelligence, and knowledge directly as it relates to financial planning. Passing the CFP exam is far more difficult and academically challenging than anything most students will encounter as an undergraduate student. If you can pass the CFP exam, then I see no reason to put up this additional arbitrary barrier to getting the CFP designation. I know some great CFPs who don't have college degrees, and they just got their CFP designation before the college degree requirement was in place. they're excellent financial planners, and forcing them to go back and get a college degree would have been a huge waste of time. I also think the push to require college degrees goes against another push of the CFP board to try and get new financial planners into the industry with more diverse backgrounds. Particularly when we think about economic diversity, there's a real challenge in trying to reach consumers who aren't the most wealthy and affluent individuals in America, where the industry is primarily focused now. Frankly, having more CFPs who don't have college degrees but can still demonstrate they're fully capable of passing the CFP exam would help broaden that pool of potential candidates and reach a broader set of consumers. I also think the constant push for more in terms of requirements for barriers to entry is at odds with some of the work done by the Obama administration to highlight how much senseless occupational licensure we've developed in America that really functionally protects industry members from competition rather than genuinely being in the interest of consumers. But the point here isn't to say that there shouldn't be any barriers to getting the CFP designation. There should be barriers, or the signal would be worthless. The point is that we shouldn't have any meaningless barriers to entry, and that's what stacking the bachelor's degree requirement on top of passing the CFP exam effectively did. The CFP exam was more meaningful of a signal, and then the CFP board added a less meaningful signal on top of that, particularly when we consider that the CFP board doesn't even care what your degree is in. To borrow from Dave Ramsey, the degrees could be in German polka history or left-handed puppetry, and the CFP board doesn't care. They just want you to check a box. Now, if you're an advisor who's impacted by this and cannot get the CFP designation as a result of the change, there are some alternative programs like the Chartered Financial Consultant, or CHFC program, which is put on by the American College, and it's similar in nature, very well respected, and worth considering. And I think if we really want to look at the origin of this push to add a bachelor's degree requirement, it actually probably stems from some criticism that some people used to throw around that, unlike doctors or attorneys, someone could be a financial planner with a CFP designation and not have a college degree. I think this really comes from a naive and almost elitist type perspective that looks down on people without college degrees. Personally, even though I am a college professor and I think there's real value in a good education, I'm pretty well aligned with Mike Rowe when it comes to thinking that many parts of our society are too negative towards career paths that don't involve a 4-year college education. Whether it's trade school, apprenticeships, or even credentials that signal credibility like the CFP designation, I do think we should do more to create opportunities outside of the traditional path rather than forcing more people onto it. But I'll get off my soapbox here and get back to the video at hand. Ultimately, I'm a fan of this ad. I think they did a great job. I think the message was on point. I think some advisors did take it the wrong way because they took it as demeaning to the profession when really the point was that financial planners happen to work in an industry where it's really hard for a non-expert themselves to assess the quality of a prospective advisor, particularly when that advisor looks the part, is placed within a professional environment that fits, and uses a little bit of lingo that makes it seem like they're knowledgeable. You truly can take someone without any background in finance and pass them off as reasonably knowledgeable. That doesn't discredit the profession, though. It talks about the importance of having designations like the CFP designation to credibly signal to consumers that someone at least has a minimum level of knowledge and experience in financial planning. But what did you think? Was it a good ad? Did I miss anything? And if you like this video, please like and subscribe because it does help out the channel and helps me do even more of these videos. Thanks, everyone.